Question 1. Assessment of the most appropriate strategy for managing the impact of robotic process automation, RPA, implementation on an existing skilled insurance team, considering regulatory expectations for operational competence and workforce adaptation. Option A. Conduct a thorough impact assessment to identify skill gaps, plan for upskilling and reskilling, and develop a strategy for integrating RPA oversight into existing roles. Option B. Focus solely on the technical deployment of RPA, assuming the existing skilled team will naturally adapt to the new automated processes without specific intervention or assessment. Option C. Automate all possible tasks and significantly reduce the size of the skilled team, assuming remaining staff can manage the new technology with minimal additional training. Option D. Proceed with RPA implementation and address any workforce skill deficiencies through reactive hiring as issues arise. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough impact assessment to identify skill gaps, plan for upskilling and reskilling, and develop a strategy for integrating RPA oversight into existing roles. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the implementation of RPA in an insurance context, particularly concerning a skilled team, directly impacts operational efficiency, employee roles, and regulatory compliance. The core challenge lies in balancing the benefits of automation with the need to maintain a competent and appropriately skilled workforce, ensuring that the introduction of RPA does not inadvertently lead to compliance breaches or a degradation of service quality due to a lack of human oversight or expertise. Careful judgment is required to assess the impact on the existing team and a plan for necessary upskilling or reskilling to meet new demands. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves conducting a comprehensive impact assessment of RPA on the existing skilled team. This assessment should identify specific tasks that will be automated, the skills required to manage, monitor, and maintain the RPA systems, and the potential for existing team members to acquire these new skills. It necessitates a proactive strategy for training, upskilling, and potentially redeploying staff to ensure the team remains capable of handling both automated processes and the more complex, judgment-based tasks that RPA cannot perform. This aligns with regulatory expectations for maintaining operational integrity and a competent workforce, as well as ethical considerations regarding employee welfare and development. For instance, the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, in the UK, which is relevant to insurance certifications, emphasizes the need for firms to have adequate systems and controls, which includes having staff with the appropriate skills and knowledge to manage technology effectively and to ensure fair customer outcomes. A thorough impact assessment directly supports this by ensuring the skilled team can adapt to and oversee the RPA implementation, thereby maintaining compliance and operational resilience. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that RPA will entirely replace the need for the skilled team, leading to significant redundancies without a plan for knowledge transfer or the development of new roles. This would likely result in a loss of institutional knowledge and expertise, potentially leading to operational failures and compliance issues. Regulators expect firms to manage technological change responsibly, and a wholesale replacement of skilled staff without adequate transition planning would be viewed as a failure to maintain adequate controls and a competent workforce. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with RPA implementation without any assessment of its impact on the skilled team, focusing solely on the technical deployment. This overlooks the critical human element and the potential for the remaining team to be overwhelmed or lack the necessary skills to manage the new automated processes. This could lead to errors in processing, inadequate oversight of automated tasks, and ultimately, breaches of regulatory requirements related to operational risk management and customer protection. The FCA, for example, expects firms to understand and manage the risks associated with their operations, including those arising from technology. A third incorrect approach is to implement RPA with a minimal training budget, assuming that existing skills will be sufficient. This fails to recognize that managing and overseeing RPA systems often requires specialized knowledge in areas such as process design, exception handling, and data analysis related to automation performance. Without adequate investment in upskilling, the skilled team may not be equipped to effectively leverage RPA, leading to suboptimal outcomes and potential compliance gaps. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured approach to assessing the impact of RPA on their skilled teams. This involves 1. Understanding the specific capabilities and limitations of the proposed RPA solution. 2. Mapping these capabilities against the current roles and responsibilities of the skilled team. 3. Identifying skill gaps and opportunities for upskilling or reskilling. 4. Developing a comprehensive change management plan that includes training, communication, and potential role adjustments. 5. Engaging with the skilled team throughout the process to ensure buy-in and address concerns. 6. Continuously monitoring the performance of both the RPA and the team to ensure ongoing effectiveness and compliance. This systematic approach ensures that technological advancements are integrated in a way that supports, rather than undermines, the firm's operational integrity and regulatory obligations. Question 2. Upon reviewing the proposed integration of a new RPA-powered chatbot for customer support within an insurance company operating under UK regulations and SISI guidelines, what is the most prudent approach to ensure compliance and maintain customer trust? Option A. Focus solely on the chatbot's ability to handle high volumes of basic inquiries, assuming that more complex issues will naturally be escalated without a defined process. Option B. Implement a phased rollout of the chatbot, starting with a limited set of frequently asked questions, coupled with rigorous testing for accuracy, data security, and bias, and establishing clear escalation paths to human advisors for complex queries. Option C. Deploy the chatbot immediately to all customer channels to capitalize on efficiency gains, with a plan to address any compliance issues that arise post-launch. Option D. Prioritize the chatbot's conversational fluency and user experience, deferring detailed data privacy and security reviews until after the initial deployment phase. The correct answer is C. Deploy the chatbot immediately to all customer channels to capitalize on efficiency gains, with a plan to address any compliance issues that arise post-launch. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the efficiency gains of RPA-driven chatbots with the paramount need for regulatory compliance and ethical customer treatment within the insurance sector. The integration of AI in customer-facing roles introduces complexities around data privacy, accuracy of information, and the potential for bias, all of which are heavily regulated. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the technology enhances, rather than compromises, the customer experience and adheres to all legal and ethical obligations. The correct approach involves a phased implementation with robust human oversight and continuous monitoring. This strategy prioritizes customer data protection by ensuring compliance with data privacy regulations, such as GDPR, if the jurisdiction is UK/SISI, or similar frameworks, by anonymizing or securely handling sensitive information. It also addresses the accuracy of information by having a clear escalation path to human agents for complex queries or when the chatbot's confidence level is low. This ensures that customers receive accurate advice and that the insurer fulfills its duty of care. Furthermore, it allows for the identification and mitigation of any potential biases in the chatbot's responses, aligning with principles of fairness and non-discrimination. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of deployment over thorough testing and validation would fail to adequately address regulatory requirements. For instance, launching a chatbot without comprehensive testing for accuracy could lead to the dissemination of incorrect policy information, potentially resulting in missold products or unmet customer expectations, which violates consumer protection laws and could lead to regulatory penalties. Another incorrect approach, such as failing to implement clear escalation protocols to human agents, would neglect the ethical obligation to provide adequate support to customers with complex needs, potentially breaching service-level agreements and regulatory expectations for customer care. Furthermore, a lack of robust data security measures during integration could expose customer data to breaches, directly contravening data protection legislation and leading to severe reputational and financial damage. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the relevant regulatory landscape. This includes identifying all applicable laws and guidelines pertaining to data privacy, consumer protection, and AI usage in financial services. The next step is to conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, evaluating potential regulatory, ethical, and operational risks associated with chatbot integration. This assessment should inform the design and implementation strategy, prioritizing controls that mitigate identified risks. Continuous monitoring and auditing of the chatbot's performance, accuracy, and adherence to ethical standards are crucial throughout its life cycle. Finally, establishing clear governance structures with defined roles and responsibilities for managing the RPA solution, including human oversight and escalation procedures, ensures ongoing compliance and customer satisfaction. Question 3. Compliance review shows that an insurance company is planning to deploy an RPA solution to automate the processing of customer claims. The RPA will access customer policy details, medical reports, and financial transaction data to verify claim eligibility and calculate payouts. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with data privacy regulations? Option A. Deploy the RPA solution immediately to realize efficiency gains and address any data privacy concerns that arise during its operation. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) before deployment, identifying all personal data processed, mapping data flows, assessing risks, and implementing appropriate technical and organizational safeguards. Option C. Implement the RPA solution with existing data security protocols, assuming they are adequate for automated processing, and conduct a post-deployment review of data privacy implications. Option D. Limit the data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to the direct inputs and outputs of the RPA, without considering its interaction with broader backend systems. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) before deployment, identifying all personal data processed, mapping data flows, assessing risks, and implementing appropriate technical and organizational safeguards. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the efficiency gains of robotic process automation, RPA, with the stringent data privacy obligations mandated by relevant regulations. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that the automated processes, while designed to streamline operations, do not inadvertently compromise the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of personal data. Careful judgment is required to identify and mitigate these risks without stifling innovation. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive data privacy impact assessment, DPIA, specifically tailored to the RPA implementation. This assessment should meticulously identify all personal data processed by the RPA, map its flow, evaluate the risks of unauthorized access, disclosure, or alteration, and define appropriate technical and organizational safeguards. This aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, ensuring that privacy considerations are embedded into the RPA solution from its inception. Regulatory frameworks typically mandate such assessments when processing is likely to result in a high risk to individuals' rights and freedoms. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with RPA deployment without conducting a thorough DPIA, assuming that existing data security measures are sufficient. This fails to acknowledge the unique risks introduced by automated processing, such as the potential for bots to access or process data in ways not originally intended or foreseen by human oversight. This oversight can lead to breaches of confidentiality and integrity, violating core data protection principles. Another incorrect approach is to implement the RPA and then attempt to retroactively address data privacy concerns. This reactive stance is often insufficient, as it may involve costly and complex remediation efforts, and it fundamentally disregards the principle of embedding privacy from the outset. It also increases the likelihood of non-compliance and potential regulatory penalties. A further incorrect approach is to limit the DPIA to only the direct data inputs and outputs of the RPA, ignoring the broader context of how the bot interacts with underlying systems and databases. This narrow focus can miss critical vulnerabilities, where the RPA might inadvertently trigger broader data access or processing activities that fall outside the scope of the initial assessment, thereby creating privacy risks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based approach. Before any RPA implementation, a comprehensive understanding of the data involved and the intended automation is crucial. This should be followed by a formal DPIA, engaging privacy experts and legal counsel. The findings of the DPIA must then inform the design, development, and deployment of the RPA, with ongoing monitoring and review to ensure continued compliance. Question 4. Performance analysis shows that a significant number of insurance processes are being automated using robotic process automation, RPA, to ensure continued compliance with the UK's regulatory framework for financial services, which approach to managing the RPA platform components, orchestrator, studio, robots, is most appropriate for maintaining robust governance and auditability. Option A. Deploy robots directly to execute automations without extensive reliance on the orchestrator, prioritizing speed of deployment over centralized oversight. Option B. Focus primarily on developing complex automations in Studio, with robots executing independently to maximize individual robot efficiency. Option C. Utilize the orchestrator for centralized scheduling, monitoring, and control of robot execution, ensuring that development in Studio adheres to strict change management and testing protocols before deployment. Option D. Implement a system where robots are managed and updated directly by IT support teams, bypassing the orchestrator for routine operational tasks. The correct answer is C. Utilize the orchestrator for centralized scheduling, monitoring, and control of robot execution, ensuring that development in Studio adheres to strict change management and testing protocols before deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a nuanced understanding of how different RPA platform components interact and how their deployment impacts regulatory compliance within the insurance sector. The challenge lies in balancing operational efficiency gains from RPA with the stringent data protection and audit trail requirements mandated by insurance regulations. A misstep in configuring or utilizing these components can lead to significant compliance breaches, reputational damage, and financial penalties. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen approach aligns with both business objectives and regulatory obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging the orchestrator's centralized management capabilities to schedule, monitor, and control the execution of robots, while ensuring that Studio is used for developing and testing automations that adhere to established governance frameworks. This ensures a controlled and auditable deployment of RPA, which is critical for regulatory compliance. Specifically, the orchestrator's logging and reporting features provide the necessary audit trails for regulatory scrutiny, demonstrating that processes are executed as intended and that data handling complies with regulations like the UK's Financial Conduct Authority (FCA) handbook, which emphasizes robust governance and risk management for technology used in regulated activities. The separation of development Studio from execution, robots, managed by the orchestrator also supports segregation of duties and change control, further bolstering compliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that focuses solely on deploying robots without robust orchestrator oversight fails to establish adequate control and monitoring. This can lead to unmanaged process execution, making it impossible to generate reliable audit trails required by regulators. It also bypasses governance controls, increasing the risk of unauthorized changes or deviations from compliant processes, which would be a direct violation of FCA principles regarding operational resilience and conduct risk. An approach that prioritizes rapid development in Studio without considering the orchestrator's role in deployment and monitoring introduces significant risks. Automations might be deployed without proper testing, validation, or adherence to security protocols, potentially leading to data breaches or errors that impact customer outcomes. This lack of centralized control and oversight directly contravenes regulatory expectations for responsible technology adoption and data integrity. An approach that attempts to bypass the orchestrator for direct robot execution, perhaps for perceived speed, undermines the entire governance structure of the RPA platform. This creates shadow IT within the RPA environment, making it impossible to track, manage, or audit processes effectively. Such a lack of transparency and control is fundamentally incompatible with the regulatory requirements for accountability and oversight in the financial services industry. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased approach to RPA implementation, starting with a clear understanding of regulatory requirements. This involves defining governance policies for development, testing, deployment, and ongoing monitoring. The RPA platform's components should be utilized in accordance with their intended functions: Studio for controlled development, orchestrator for centralized management and auditing, and robots for execution under orchestrator supervision. Regular reviews and audits of RPA processes and their compliance with regulatory frameworks, such as those outlined by the FCA, are essential to maintain an acceptable risk profile and ensure ongoing adherence to legal and ethical standards. Question 5. Implementation of robotic process automation (RPA) within an insurance company requires bots to access customer policy data via an external API. Which API authentication approach best balances security, operational efficiency, and regulatory compliance for this scenario? Option A. Utilizing OAuth 2.0 with an authorization code grant flow, short-lived access tokens, and refresh tokens. Option B. Employing basic authentication with hard-coded usernames and passwords stored in the RPA workflow. Option C. Embedding static API keys directly within the RPA bot's configuration files. Option D. Relying exclusively on IP address whitelisting for API access. The correct answer is A. Utilizing OAuth 2.0 with an authorization code grant flow, short-lived access tokens, and refresh tokens. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because RPA, while offering efficiency, introduces new security vulnerabilities, particularly concerning how bots access sensitive insurance data through APIs. Ensuring robust API authentication is paramount to prevent unauthorized access, data breaches, and regulatory noncompliance, which could lead to significant financial penalties and reputational damage. The complexity lies in balancing security with the operational needs of RPA, ensuring that authentication mechanisms are both secure and practical for automated processes. The correct approach involves implementing OAuth 2.0 with a robust authorization code grant flow, coupled with short-lived access tokens and refresh tokens. This method provides a secure, standardized way for the RPA bot to obtain temporary access to protected resources without directly handling user credentials. The authorization code grant flow ensures that the client RPA bot receives an authorization code, which is then exchanged for an access token, minimizing the exposure of sensitive credentials. The use of short-lived access tokens limits the window of opportunity for attackers if a token is compromised, while refresh tokens allow for seamless renewal of access without requiring reauthentication by a human user, maintaining operational efficiency. This aligns with the principles of least privilege and secure credential management, which are implicitly or explicitly required by data protection regulations, such as the UK's GDPR and ICO guidance on data security. An incorrect approach would be to embed API keys directly within the RPA bot's code or configuration files. This is a significant security failure because API keys are often treated as long-lived credentials. If the RPA bot's code or configuration is compromised, these keys can be easily extracted and used to gain unauthorized access to insurance data, leading to severe data breaches. This directly contravenes the regulatory expectation of secure data handling and protection, as mandated by data privacy laws. Another incorrect approach is to use basic authentication with hard-coded usernames and passwords for the RPA bot. This is highly insecure as it exposes sensitive login credentials directly. Basic authentication transmits credentials in plain text or easily decodable formats, making them vulnerable to interception. Storing these credentials within the RPA system without proper encryption or secure vaulting is a direct violation of data security, best practices, and regulatory requirements for protecting personal and sensitive insurance information. A further incorrect approach is to rely solely on IP whitelisting for API access. While IP whitelisting can be a supplementary security measure, it is insufficient as a primary authentication mechanism. IP addresses can be spoofed, and if an attacker gains access to a whitelisted IP address, they can bypass this control. It does not verify the identity of the entity making the request, failing to meet the stringent authentication requirements necessary for accessing sensitive insurance data, and thus risking non-compliance with data protection regulations. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing security and compliance. This involves understanding the sensitivity of the data being accessed, the potential impact of a breach, and the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the insurance sector. When implementing RPA for API access, the decision-making process should involve security architects, compliance officers, and RPA developers to select authentication methods that are both robust and compliant, such as OAuth 2.0, and to ensure secure credential management practices are followed throughout the RPA lifecycle. Question 6. Which approach would be most compliant with regulatory frameworks for finance and accounting automation in the insurance sector, ensuring data integrity and auditability? Option A. Utilizing RPA to bypass certain existing internal control procedures that are perceived as slowing down the automated financial processes. Option B. Deploying RPA to automate financial reporting, assuming the automation logic inherently guarantees accuracy and eliminates the need for manual review or reconciliation. Option C. Prioritizing the rapid deployment of RPA across all finance functions to achieve immediate efficiency gains, deferring detailed validation and reconciliation until after the initial rollout. Option D. Implementing RPA for financial data entry and processing, followed by automated reconciliation checks against source documents and independent control totals before finalization. The correct answer is D. Implementing RPA for financial data entry and processing, followed by automated reconciliation checks against source documents and independent control totals before finalization. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the efficiency gains of RPA in finance and accounting with the stringent regulatory obligations for data integrity, accuracy, and auditability within the insurance sector. The potential for automated processes to introduce subtle errors or bypass necessary controls necessitates a rigorous compliance framework. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the implementation of RPA does not inadvertently lead to regulatory breaches or financial misstatements. The correct approach involves establishing robust validation and reconciliation procedures for all RPA-driven financial transactions. This means that before any automated output is finalized or used for regulatory reporting, it must be cross-referenced against source data or independent control totals. This ensures that the automation is not only efficient, but also accurate and compliant with financial reporting standards and insurance regulations. This approach directly addresses the regulatory requirement for accurate financial reporting and the need for auditable trails, as mandated by bodies like the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, in the UK, which oversees insurance firms. The principle of fit and proper also extends to the systems and processes used, demanding that they are reliable and do not compromise financial integrity. An incorrect approach that relies solely on the perceived infallibility of RPA without independent verification fails to meet regulatory expectations for accuracy and control. This could lead to misstated financial reports, which are a direct violation of accounting standards and insurance regulations. Such an approach also undermines auditability, as it becomes difficult to trace discrepancies or prove the accuracy of automated figures. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of deployment over thorough testing and validation introduces significant risk. While RPA aims to improve efficiency, this should not come at the expense of compliance. Rushing implementation without adequate checks can embed errors that are harder to detect and rectify later, potentially leading to regulatory penalties and reputational damage. This disregards the principle of due diligence in implementing new technologies within a regulated financial environment. A further incorrect approach that involves bypassing established internal controls for the sake of automation is fundamentally flawed. RPA should augment, not circumvent, existing control frameworks. Circumventing controls, even with automation, creates significant governance and compliance gaps, making the firm vulnerable to fraud and errors, and directly contravening regulatory expectations for robust internal control systems. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment of RPA implementation. This includes identifying critical financial processes, understanding the specific regulatory requirements for those processes, designing RPA solutions with built-in controls and reconciliation points, and conducting thorough testing and ongoing monitoring to ensure continued compliance and accuracy. Professionals must always prioritize regulatory adherence and data integrity over purely operational efficiency gains. Question 7. The analysis reveals that an insurance firm is considering implementing an intelligent document processing (I) solution to automate the extraction of policy details from various insurance application forms. To ensure compliance with UK regulatory requirements and protect customer interests, which of the following risk assessment approaches is most appropriate? Option A. Prioritizing the speed of data extraction and cost saving, with minimal human oversight for routine documents. assuming the IDP's machine learning model is highly accurate. Option B, implementing the IDP solution immediately to gain a competitive advantage, with a plan to address any compliance issues that may arise retrospectively. Option C, conducting a comprehensive risk assessment that includes validating IDP outputs against human review for critical data fields, assessing the IDP's data security and privacy controls against UK GDPR requirements, and establishing clear escalation procedures for identified discrepancies. Option D, focusing solely on the technical accuracy of the IDP's optical character recognition (OCR) capabilities, without considering the broader implications for data integrity, customer data protection, or regulatory compliance. The correct answer is A, prioritizing the speed of data extraction and cost savings, with minimal human oversight for routine documents, assuming the IDP's machine learning model is highly accurate. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the efficiency gains of intelligent document processing, with the stringent regulatory obligations of the insurance sector, particularly concerning data accuracy, customer data protection, and fair treatment. The use of RPA and IDP introduces new layers of risk that must be meticulously assessed and managed to ensure compliance with the relevant regulatory framework, which for this exam is assumed to be the UK's regulatory environment as governed by the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, and the Information Commissioner's Office, ICO. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that prioritizes the accuracy and integrity of data processed by the IDP, alongside robust data security and privacy measures. This aligns with the FCA's principles for businesses, particularly Principle 3, Customers' Interests, and Principle 6, Information about the firm and its products and services, which necessitate that firms act honestly, fairly, and professionally in accordance with the best interests of their customers. Furthermore, the ICO's guidance under the UK GDPR mandates that data processing must be lawful, fair, and transparent, and that appropriate technical and organizational measures are in place to ensure data security. A thorough risk assessment, including validation of IDP outputs against human review for critical data points, directly addresses these requirements by mitigating the risk of errors that could lead to incorrect policy terms, mispricing, or breaches of customer data confidentiality. An incorrect approach that solely focuses on the speed of processing without adequate validation mechanisms fails to uphold the duty of care to customers and breaches regulatory expectations for accuracy. This could lead to regulatory sanctions for misrepresentation or unfair treatment. Another incorrect approach that neglects to assess the IDP's compliance with data protection principles, such as data minimization and purpose limitation, risks violating the UK GDPR. This could result in significant fines and reputational damage. An approach that prioritizes cost reduction over risk mitigation, for instance, by implementing IDP without sufficient testing or oversight, demonstrates a disregard for regulatory obligations and customer welfare, potentially leading to systemic failures in data handling and decision-making. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a structured risk management framework. This involves identifying potential risks associated with IDP implementation, assessing their likelihood and impact, and developing mitigation strategies that are proportionate to the identified risks. It necessitates a proactive approach to compliance, integrating regulatory requirements into the design and deployment of RPA and IDP solutions, and establishing clear governance and oversight mechanisms. Continuous monitoring and periodic reassessment of risks are also crucial to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes. Question 8. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a proposed robotic process automation (RPA) solution, designed using Blue Prism Design Studio to automate the processing of new insurance policy applications, may involve the handling of sensitive personal data. The IT department has confirmed that the underlying infrastructure meets general security standards. Which of the following actions is the most appropriate and compliant next step? Option A. Proceed with the automation deployment after the IT department confirms that the general security standards of the infrastructure are met, assuming the standard Blue Prism security features are sufficient. Option B. Initiate a formal review of the automation's efficiency gains and potential cost savings by the business unit, deferring any detailed compliance or data protection review until after the initial deployment. Option C. Obtain informal sign-off from the data protection officer and the compliance team based on a high-level overview of the automation's purpose, without a detailed review of the design studio outputs. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive review of the Blue Prism process design, including workflow logic and data handling steps, by the data protection officer and the compliance team to ensure adherence to data privacy regulations and insurance conduct rules. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive review of the Blue Prism process design, including workflow logic and data handling steps, by the data protection officer and the compliance team to ensure adherence to data privacy regulations and insurance conduct rules. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the efficiency gains promised by RPA and the stringent regulatory requirements for data privacy and security within the insurance sector. The use of Blue Prism Design Studio, a powerful tool for automating complex processes, necessitates a meticulous approach to ensure that automated workflows do not inadvertently create new vulnerabilities or violate compliance mandates. The challenge lies in balancing the speed of automation with the absolute necessity of safeguarding sensitive customer information and adhering to regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data protection and financial conduct. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the proposed Blue Prism process design by the Data Protection Officer, DPO, and the compliance team. This is the right professional practice because it directly addresses the core regulatory requirement of ensuring data privacy and security before deployment. The DPO's involvement is critical for assessing compliance with data protection laws e.g. GDPR if the jurisdiction is UK/CISI, or relevant U.S. state/federal laws if U.S. jurisdiction is specified. The compliance team's review ensures adherence to broader insurance regulations concerning operational resilience, customer data handling, and fair treatment of customers. This multidisciplinary review acts as a crucial control point, identifying potential risks of unauthorized access, data leakage, or non-compliance with reporting obligations that might arise from the automation. Incorrect approaches analysis. Proceeding with the automation solely based on the IT department's assurance of technical security, without involving the DPO in compliance, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach overlooks the specific mandates of data protection and insurance conduct regulations, which often require explicit oversight from designated roles responsible for these areas. Creates a risk of noncompliance with data privacy laws, potentially leading to substantial fines and reputational damage. Deploying the automation after a brief, informal discussion with the DPO in compliance, without a formal review of the design studio outputs and process maps, is also professionally unacceptable. This informal approach fails to provide the necessary documented evidence of due diligence and risk assessment required by regulators. It increases the likelihood of overlooking subtle but critical compliance gaps that a structured review would uncover. Relying solely on the business unit's assessment of efficiency gains and assuming that the standard Blue Prism security features are sufficient, without any dedicated compliance or data protection review, is a critical failure. This approach prioritizes operational efficiency over regulatory adherence and data security, which is contrary to the fundamental principles of responsible automation in a regulated industry. It exposes the organization to risks of data breaches, regulatory penalties, and loss of customer trust. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should adopt a risk-based approach that integrates compliance and data protection considerations from the outset of the RPA design process. This involves establishing clear protocols for RPA development, including mandatory review gates involving the DPO and compliance teams at critical stages, such as design and pre-deployment. The decision-making process should prioritize regulatory adherence and data security, ensuring that efficiency gains do not come at the expense of compliance. When in doubt, seeking clarification from regulatory bodies or legal counsel is advisable. The principle of privacy by design and security by design should be embedded within the RPA development lifecycle. Question 9. The efficiency study reveals that the Robotic Process Automation RPA deployment for claims processing has significantly reduced manual effort. However, concerns have been raised regarding the oversight and management of these automated processes within the Blue Prism control room. Considering the regulatory framework for RPA in insurance, which of the following approaches to reviewing the control room's configuration is most appropriate to ensure ongoing compliance and operational integrity? Option A. Implement standard IT security protocols for the control room, assuming they adequately cover the risks associated with RPA operations. Option B. Focus on optimizing bot execution speed and success rates to maximize the efficiency gains identified in the study. Option C. Prioritize the deployment of new automated workflows to further enhance efficiency, deferring detailed control room configuration review until a later stage. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive review of the control room's audit logging, access controls, and exception handling procedures against relevant insurance regulations and internal governance policies. The correct answer is B. Focus on optimizing bot execution speed and success rates to maximize the efficiency gains identified in the study. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between operational efficiency gains promised by RPA and the stringent regulatory requirements for data security, auditability, and compliance within the insurance sector. The control room's role in managing and monitoring these automated processes means any misconfiguration or oversight can have significant compliance implications, potentially leading to data breaches, regulatory fines, and reputational damage. The need to balance speed with accuracy and security necessitates careful judgment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the control room's configuration against the specific regulatory framework for RPA in insurance, likely encompassing data protection laws, e.g., GDPR if UK jurisdiction is implied, financial conduct regulations, and internal audit policies. This includes verifying that audit logs are comprehensive, access controls are robust and role-based, and exception handling procedures are clearly defined and aligned with regulatory expectations for incident reporting and remediation. This approach ensures that the RPA deployment not only enhances efficiency, but also adheres to all legal and ethical obligations, safeguarding sensitive customer data and maintaining operational integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that prioritizes immediate deployment without a comprehensive regulatory review risks noncompliance. This could lead to inadequate audit trails, which are critical for regulatory scrutiny and dispute resolution. Failure to implement granular access controls could result in unauthorized access or modification of automated processes, violating data protection principles and internal governance. Overlooking robust exception handling mechanisms means that when errors occur, they may not be identified, reported, or resolved in a timely manner, contravening regulatory requirements for operational resilience and incident management. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that standard IT security measures are sufficient without considering the specific nuances of RPA governance. RPA bots often have elevated privileges to interact with multiple systems, making their oversight and control paramount. A lack of specific RPA-centric security protocols within the control room could leave vulnerabilities that traditional IT security might not detect. A third incorrect approach might involve focusing solely on the technical performance metrics of the bots, such as execution speed and success rates, while neglecting the compliance and auditability aspects managed by the control room. While performance is important, regulatory adherence is non-negotiable and forms the bedrock of trust and legality in the insurance industry. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, starting with a clear understanding of the applicable regulatory landscape. Before configuring or reviewing the control room, they must identify all relevant laws, guidelines, and internal policies. The next step is to map these requirements to the specific functionalities of the control room, such as logging, scheduling, security, and exception management. A gap analysis should then be performed to identify any discrepancies. Finally, remediation plans should be developed and implemented, with ongoing monitoring and periodic reassessments to ensure continued compliance. This structured process ensures that efficiency gains are achieved responsibly and ethically. Question 10. System analysis indicates that a healthcare insurance provider is considering implementing an RPA solution to automate the processing of claims data, which inherently contains protected health information. 5. The primary goal is to increase operational efficiency and reduce processing times. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act (HIPAA) while achieving the desired efficiency gains? Option A. Utilize the RPA solution to aggregate and analyze claims data for operational insights, without specific consideration for how the PHI within the data is handled by the automation, as long as the data remains within the organization's network. Option B. Develop and implement the RPA solution with a comprehensive pre-deployment strategy that includes a thorough HIPAA risk assessment, robust encryption of PHI, granular access controls for bots, and detailed audit logging of all automated actions. Option C. Deploy the RPA solution immediately to capture efficiency benefits, with a plan to address HIPAA compliance concerns retrospectively as they arise. Option D. Implement the RPA solution with existing IT security protocols, assuming they are sufficient to protect PHI, and focus solely on the automation's functional output. The correct answer is C. Deploy the RPA solution immediately to capture efficiency benefits, with a plan to address HIPAA compliance concerns retrospectively as they arise. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the efficiency gains of RPA with the stringent privacy and security mandates of HIPAA. The core conflict lies in ensuring that automated processes, which by nature handle sensitive protected health information, do not inadvertently create vulnerabilities or violate patient privacy rights. The need for robust data protection, audit trails, and access controls within an automated workflow demands careful consideration and adherence to regulatory requirements. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing RPA with a comprehensive security and compliance framework that is specifically designed to meet HIPAA requirements. This includes conducting a thorough risk assessment to identify potential PHI exposure points within the RPA process, implementing robust encryption for data in transit and at rest, establishing granular access controls for the RPA bots and the data they access, and ensuring that the RPA solution generates detailed audit logs for all actions performed. This approach directly addresses HIPAA Security Rule 42 CFR Part 160 and Subparts A and C of Part 164, and Privacy Rule 42 CFR Part 160 and Subparts A and E of Part 164, by safeguarding PHI and maintaining accountability. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over security and compliance overlooks the fundamental HIPAA mandate to protect PHI. This failure to conduct a risk assessment or implement appropriate safeguards can lead to unauthorized access, disclosure, or breaches of PHI, resulting in significant penalties and reputational damage. An approach that assumes existing IT security measures are sufficient for RPA without specific HIPAA-focused validation is also flawed. RPA bots often interact with systems in ways that differ from human users, potentially creating new attack vectors or data handling risks that standard security protocols may not adequately address. This can lead to non-compliance with HIPAA technical safeguards and administrative requirements. An approach that focuses solely on the functional benefits of RPA without considering the data handling implications for PHI is a critical error. While RPA can automate tasks, if it processes PHI without adhering to HIPAA rules on minimum necessary use, patient rights, and business associate agreements, if applicable, it directly violates the privacy rule and can lead to improper disclosure of sensitive information. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, compliance-first mindset when implementing RPA in healthcare. This involves a structured approach. 1. Identify and classify all PHI handled by the RPA process. 2. Conduct a comprehensive HIPAA risk assessment specifically for the RPA workflow. 3. Design and implement technical safeguards, encryption, access controls, audit trails, and administrative safeguards, policies, procedures, training that align with HIPAA requirements. 4. Regularly monitor and audit the RPA process for compliance and security. 5. Ensure that any third-party RPA vendors are also HIPAA compliant and have appropriate business associate agreements in place. Question 11. Benchmark analysis indicates that a significant portion of customer service inquiries in the insurance sector can be addressed through automated email responses. Considering the regulatory landscape for insurance operations, Which of the following implementation strategies for an RPA-powered automated email response system would be most compliant and professionally sound? Option A. Automate all email responses based on keyword identification, assuming that the RPA can accurately interpret customer intent across all query types. Option B. Deploy the RPA to handle all incoming customer emails immediately, with a policy to review a small percentage of responses retrospectively for quality control. Option C. Implement the RPA for a limited set of standardized, low-risk inquiries, with a mandatory human review of all generated responses before dispatch and a clear escalation process for complex cases. Option D. Integrate the RPA with a third-party chatbot that handles all customer interactions, with no direct human oversight of the RPA's email generation process. The correct answer is B. Deploy the RPA to handle all incoming customer emails immediately, with a policy to review a small percentage of responses retrospectively for quality control. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the efficiency gains offered by RPA for automated email responses and the stringent regulatory requirements for data privacy, accuracy, and customer communication within the insurance sector. Ensuring that automated responses are not only timely but also compliant with data protection laws and maintain a professional, accurate, and empathetic tone is paramount. Missteps can lead to regulatory breaches, reputational damage, and customer dissatisfaction. The correct approach involves a phased implementation with robust human oversight and continuous validation. This means initially deploying the RPA for low-risk, high-volume queries, where responses are standardized and factual, such as acknowledging receipt of a claim or providing general policy information. Crucially, this approach mandates a human review of a statistically significant sample of automated responses before they are sent, and a clear escalation path for complex or sensitive queries that the RPA cannot handle. Regulatory justification stems from principles of data protection, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the jurisdiction, or equivalent local data privacy laws, which require that personal data is processed lawfully, fairly, and transparently, and that individuals have the right to human intervention. Accuracy in policy information and claim handling is also a regulatory imperative, necessitating validation to prevent miscommunication or incorrect advice. Ethical considerations demand that customers are treated with respect and that their queries are handled competently, which automated systems alone may not always guarantee without human oversight. An incorrect approach would be to fully automate all email responses immediately without any form of human review or validation. This fails to address the regulatory requirement for accuracy and the potential for the RPA to misinterpret queries or provide incorrect information, leading to breaches of consumer protection laws and potentially misrepresentation of policy terms. It also risks violating data protection principles by potentially exposing sensitive customer information through an unvetted automated process. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on keyword matching for response generation, ignoring the nuances of customer intent and context. This could lead to inappropriate or irrelevant responses, damaging customer trust and potentially breaching regulatory expectations for clear and effective communication. Finally, an approach that fails to establish clear escalation procedures for complex queries would be flawed, as it would leave customers with unresolved issues and expose the firm to regulatory scrutiny for inadequate complaint handling. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a risk-based approach. This involves identifying the potential impact of RPA errors on customers and the business, assessing the complexity and sensitivity of different types of customer queries, and prioritizing automation for tasks with the lowest risk and highest volume. It necessitates a commitment to ongoing monitoring, testing, and adaptation of the RPA system, ensuring that human expertise remains integrated into the process, particularly for critical decision-making and customer interaction points. Question 12. Consider a scenario where an insurance company is implementing a robotic process automation (RPA) solution to streamline its claims processing. The RPA is designed to gather data from various sources, including customer policy details, medical reports, and accident descriptions, to perform initial risk assessment and fraud detection. The data gathered is highly sensitive and contains personally identifiable information. The project manager is eager to maximize the efficiency gains from the RPA's analytical capabilities. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach to data gathering and analysis for this RPA implementation? Option A. Focus solely on the RPA's ability to extract and present data in a structured format, without implementing specific measures for data anonymization or aggregation, as the primary goal is data collection for analysis. Option B. Implement robust data anonymization and aggregation techniques to remove or obscure personally identifiable information before the RPA performs its analysis, ensuring that the insights derived are based on de-identified data. Option C. Proceed with the RPA's analysis of raw, personally identifiable data, assuming that the efficiency gains outweigh the potential privacy risks, and address any data breaches reactively if they occur. Option D. Allow the RPA to directly access and analyze raw, personally identifiable data from all sources, relying on the RPA software's built-in security features to protect the information. The correct answer is B. Implement robust data anonymization and aggregation techniques to remove or obscure personally identifiable information before the RPA performs its analysis, ensuring that the insights derived are based on de-identified data. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between leveraging advanced technology for efficiency and the paramount importance of data privacy and regulatory compliance within the insurance sector. The ethical dilemma arises when the pursuit of enhanced data analysis, which could lead to more accurate risk assessment and potentially better customer outcomes, clashes with the obligation to protect sensitive personal information and adhere to data protection laws. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing interests, ensuring that technological advancement does not come at the expense of fundamental ethical and legal duties. The correct approach involves a robust data anonymization and aggregation process before the RPA system performs its analysis. This method upholds the principle of data minimization and privacy by design, aligning with regulatory frameworks that mandate the protection of personal data. By removing or obscuring direct identifiers, the risk of re-identification is significantly reduced, thereby complying with data protection regulations that require lawful processing and safeguarding of personal information. This approach ensures that the insights derived from the data are valuable for business operations without compromising individual privacy rights. An incorrect approach would be to allow the RPA to directly access and analyze raw, personally identifiable data without adequate safeguards. This directly violates data protection principles, as it exposes sensitive information to potential breaches or misuse. Such an action would contravene regulations that require explicit consent for data processing or necessitate strong justification for processing, and it fails to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect personal data. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the RPA's internal security features without independent verification or a comprehensive data governance framework. While RPA software may have security protocols, these are not a substitute for overarching regulatory compliance and ethical data handling practices. Over-reliance on proprietary security, without considering external regulatory requirements and ethical implications, can lead to significant compliance failures and reputational damage. A further incorrect approach would be to proceed with analysis without a clear understanding of the data's sensitivity and the applicable regulatory landscape. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to proactively identify and mitigate risks associated with data processing. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a proactive risk assessment, a thorough understanding of relevant data protection laws, such as GDPR if applicable to the jurisdiction, or equivalent local regulations, and the implementation of a data governance strategy that prioritizes ethical data handling and regulatory adherence throughout the entire RPA lifecycle. This involves consulting with legal and compliance experts, establishing clear data usage policies, and ensuring ongoing monitoring and auditing of RPA processes. Question 13. The control framework reveals that an insurance company is implementing Robotic Process Automation RPA to enhance its customer self-service portal. The goal is to streamline policy inquiries, claims initiation, and premium payments. Which approach best ensures that this technological advancement aligns with regulatory requirements and upholds customer trust? Option A. Implement the RPA for internal processes only and maintain the existing, less efficient, customer-facing portal to avoid potential regulatory complexities associated with automated customer interactions. Option B. Focus on optimizing the user interface and customer experience of the self-service portal, assuming that a user-friendly design will inherently lead to compliant customer interactions. Option C. Prioritize the rapid deployment of the RPA and self-service portal to capture immediate efficiency gains, with a plan to address any compliance issues that arise post-launch. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment that specifically evaluates the RPA's impact on regulatory compliance, data privacy, and fair customer treatment, followed by rigorous testing and validation of the integrated self-service portal against these identified risks and regulatory obligations. The correct answer is C. Prioritize the rapid deployment of the RPA and self-service portal to capture immediate efficiency gains, with a plan to address any compliance issues that arise post-launch. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the drive for efficiency through RPA and self-service portals with the paramount need for regulatory compliance and customer protection within the insurance sector. The introduction of new technology, especially in customer-facing applications, necessitates a thorough understanding of how it impacts existing regulatory obligations, such as data privacy, fair treatment of customers, and accurate information dissemination. The potential for RPA to automate processes that interact with customer data means that any flaws in the automation or the portal's design could lead to significant regulatory breaches and reputational damage. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment and validation process that explicitly considers the regulatory implications of RPA integration into self-service portals. This means not just testing the functionality of the RPA and the portal, but also verifying that the automated processes adhere to all relevant insurance regulations, data protection laws, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the jurisdiction, and internal compliance policies. This proactive approach ensures that the self-service portal, powered by RPA, enhances customer experience without compromising regulatory integrity or customer trust. It aligns with the principle of compliance by design, embedding regulatory considerations from the outset. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the speed and cost-saving benefits of RPA without adequately assessing regulatory compliance is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to breaches of data privacy regulations if sensitive customer information is mishandled by the RPA or the portal. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes the user interface and customer experience of the self-service portal over the accuracy and regulatory adherence of the underlying RPA processes is also flawed. This might result in customers receiving incorrect information or being guided through processes that do not meet regulatory requirements, potentially leading to mis-selling or unfair treatment. Furthermore, an approach that neglects to establish clear oversight and audit trails for the RPA-driven self-service portal creates a significant compliance risk, as it hinders the ability to investigate issues, demonstrate adherence to regulations, and identify areas for improvement. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with identifying all applicable regulatory requirements for self-service portals and RPA in the insurance context. This should be followed by a thorough risk assessment that maps potential RPA and portal failures to specific regulatory breaches. The chosen solution should then be one that demonstrably mitigates these risks and ensures compliance. Continuous monitoring and periodic audits of the RPA and self-service portal are crucial to maintain ongoing compliance and adapt to evolving regulatory landscapes. Question 14. The audit findings indicate that the Robotic Process Automation (RPA) implementation for policy endorsements is experiencing a higher than expected rate of exceptions requiring manual intervention. Which of the following approaches is most appropriate for addressing these findings and ensuring ongoing compliance with regulatory requirements for policy management systems? Option A. Decommission the RPA solution for policy endorsements and revert to the previous manual process to eliminate the risk of exceptions. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment of the RPA's impact on policy endorsement accuracy, data integrity, and regulatory adherence, focusing on identifying root causes for exceptions and developing targeted mitigation strategies. Option C. Immediately increase the number of human reviewers to process the exceptions, prioritizing speed to clear the backlog of manual interventions. Option D. Implement additional monitoring tools to track the volume of exceptions without investigating the underlying causes of the RPA's performance. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment of the RPA's impact on policy endorsement accuracy, data integrity, and regulatory adherence, focusing on identifying root causes for exceptions and developing targeted mitigation strategies. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the efficiency gains of RPA with the inherent risks of automated processes, particularly within policy management systems where accuracy and compliance are paramount. The need for a robust risk assessment framework is critical to ensure that the implementation of RPA does not inadvertently lead to regulatory breaches, data inaccuracies, or operational failures that could impact policyholders and the insurer's reputation. Careful judgment is required to identify, evaluate, and mitigate these risks effectively. The correct approach involves a comprehensive, multifaceted risk assessment that considers various categories of risk associated with RPA and policy management. This includes operational risks, e.g., bot errors, system downtime, data privacy and security risks, e.g., unauthorized access data breaches, compliance risks, e.g., non-adherence to regulatory requirements for policy issuance, amendments, or cancellations, and financial risks, e.g., incorrect premium calculations, fraudulent claims. This approach is correct because it aligns with the principles of good governance and risk management expected within the insurance sector, aiming to proactively identify and address potential issues before they manifest. Specifically, within the UK regulatory framework, the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, emphasizes the importance of firms having robust systems and controls to manage operational resilience and conduct business with due care, skill, and diligence. This comprehensive risk assessment directly supports these objectives by ensuring that RPA deployments are scrutinized for potential failures that could impact these areas. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the speed and cost savings of RPA without a thorough risk assessment fails to acknowledge the potential for significant operational and compliance failures. This oversight could lead to breaches of regulatory requirements, such as those mandated by the FCA regarding fair treatment of customers and accurate record keeping. For instance, if an RPA bot incorrectly processes a policy amendment due to a lack of adequate error handling or validation, it could result in incorrect policy terms, premiums, or coverage, leading to customer detriment and regulatory scrutiny. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes technical implementation over business process understanding is also professionally unacceptable. RPA is a tool to automate business processes, and its effectiveness and safety are contingent on a deep understanding of those processes. Without this, the RPA might automate flawed or inefficient processes, or fail to account for edge cases and exceptions that are critical in policy management. This can lead to systemic errors that are difficult to detect and rectify, potentially violating regulatory expectations for accurate and reliable policy administration. A further incorrect approach that relies on post-implementation monitoring alone, without a proactive risk assessment phase, is insufficient. While monitoring is essential, it is a reactive measure. A robust risk assessment should precede implementation to identify and mitigate risks upfront. Relying solely on monitoring means that potential issues might only be discovered after they have caused harm, which is contrary to the FCA's emphasis on proactive risk management and the principle of treating customers fairly. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This begins with identifying all potential risks associated with the RPA implementation in the context of policy management systems. This identification should involve stakeholders from IT, business operations, compliance, and legal departments. Following identification, each risk should be assessed for its likelihood and potential impact. Mitigation strategies should then be developed and implemented, followed by ongoing monitoring and review. This iterative process ensures that RPA is deployed responsibly and effectively, safeguarding both the business and its customers. Question 15. Stakeholder feedback indicates that the new Automation Anywhere bot designed to process insurance claims data is experiencing a high rate of data errors being passed to downstream systems, despite the initial project scope including data validation. To address this, what is the most appropriate immediate action to ensure regulatory compliance and data integrity? Option A. Proceed with the automation as planned to meet deployment timelines, with a plan to address data quality issues in a subsequent phase. Option B. Instruct the downstream systems to enhance their error handling capabilities to catch and flag any incorrect data originating from the bot. Option C. Increase the frequency of manual data audits on the output of the bot to identify and correct errors after they have been processed. Option D. Immediately halt the bot's operation and implement a comprehensive data validation module within the Automation Anywhere bot itself, ensuring all data meets predefined accuracy and completeness standards before processing or transfer. Correct answer is D. Immediately halt the bot's operation and implement a comprehensive data validation module within the Automation Anywhere bot itself, ensuring all data meets predefined accuracy and completeness standards before processing or transfer. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the efficiency gains of RPA with the imperative to maintain data integrity and comply with regulatory requirements for accurate record keeping in the insurance sector. The pressure to deliver rapid automation solutions can sometimes lead to overlooking critical validation steps, which can have significant downstream consequences, including regulatory penalties and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the automation process itself is robust and auditable. The correct approach involves implementing a comprehensive validation framework within the Automation Anywhere bot. This framework should include automated checks for data completeness, format consistency, and adherence to predefined business rules before data is processed or transferred. Specifically, the bot should be configured to flag or reject any records that fail these validation checks, triggering a manual review process. This aligns with regulatory expectations for data accuracy and integrity, as mandated by frameworks such as the FCA's Principles for Businesses, PRIN, in the UK, which requires firms to conduct their business with due skill, care, and diligence, and to have adequate systems and controls in place to ensure accurate record keeping. By building validation into the bot, the firm demonstrates a proactive approach to risk management and regulatory compliance, ensuring that only accurate data enters downstream systems. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the automation without implementing robust validation checks within the bot, assuming that downstream systems will catch errors. This fails to meet the regulatory obligation to ensure data accuracy at the point of processing. It also creates a significant risk of propagating incorrect information, which could lead to mispriced policies, incorrect claims handling, and ultimately, breaches of regulatory requirements related to customer treatment and financial reporting. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on manual data validation after the bot has processed the data. While manual checks can identify errors, they are often time-consuming, prone to human error, and do not address the root cause of the problem, the lack of validation within the automation itself. This approach is inefficient and increases the likelihood of errors going unnoticed for longer periods, potentially leading to regulatory scrutiny. A further incorrect approach would be to bypass the validation requirements to meet aggressive deployment timelines. This prioritizes speed over accuracy and compliance, a clear violation of professional duty and regulatory expectations. Such a decision would expose the firm to substantial risks, including fines, sanctions, and loss of customer trust, as it demonstrates a disregard for the integrity of data and the regulatory framework governing insurance operations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based approach. For deploying any RPA solution, a thorough impact assessment should be conducted, identifying potential risks to data integrity and regulatory compliance. This assessment should inform the design of the automation, ensuring that appropriate controls, including validation mechanisms, are embedded within the bot. Furthermore, ongoing monitoring and testing of the RPA solution are crucial to ensure its continued accuracy and compliance. When faced with pressure to compromise on these controls, professionals must advocate for the importance of robust validation, clearly articulating the regulatory and business risks associated with shortcuts. Question 16. The assessment process reveals that an insurance company is considering implementing Robotic Process Automation RPA to streamline its claims processing. The project team is focused on the technical aspects of bot development and integration, with limited consideration for the broader regulatory implications. Which of the following approaches best addresses the regulatory landscape in insurance for this RPA initiative? Option A. Proceed with the RPA implementation based on the technical feasibility and potential efficiency gains, assuming that existing general data protection policies will adequately cover the automated processes. Option B. Focus on the technical security of the RPA system itself, ensuring it is protected from cyber threats, without explicitly mapping specific insurance regulatory requirements to the automated workflows. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive regulatory impact assessment to identify all applicable laws and guidelines concerning data privacy, customer consent, and audit trails for automated processes, and integrate these requirements into the RPA design and governance framework from the outset. Option D. Prioritize the rapid deployment of RPA to achieve immediate cost savings, with a plan to address any regulatory concerns that may arise after the system is operational. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive regulatory impact assessment to identify all applicable laws and guidelines concerning data privacy, customer consent, and audit trails for automated processes, and integrate these requirements into the RPA design and governance framework from the outset. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an insurance firm to balance the efficiency gains of RPA with the stringent regulatory obligations surrounding data privacy, security, and customer protection. The introduction of RPA, while beneficial for operational streamlining, can introduce new risks if not implemented and governed with a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the automation process itself does not inadvertently lead to non-compliance with established insurance regulations. The correct approach involves proactively identifying and documenting all relevant regulatory requirements that apply to the specific RPA implementation. This includes understanding data handling protocols, consent mechanisms, audit trail requirements, and the need for human oversight in critical decision-making processes. By integrating regulatory considerations from the outset and embedding them into the RPA design and deployment, the firm can ensure that the automated processes are compliant by design. This approach aligns with the principle of regulatory by design and demonstrates a commitment to upholding legal and ethical standards, thereby mitigating risks of fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical implementation of RPA without considering regulatory implications is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of due diligence regarding data protection laws, which could lead to unauthorized access or disclosure of sensitive customer information, resulting in significant penalties and legal action. Another incorrect approach that neglects to establish clear lines of human accountability for RPA-driven decisions is also problematic. Many insurance regulations require human oversight and the ability to override automated decisions, especially those impacting policyholders. Failing to implement this oversight can lead to unfair outcomes for customers and breaches of regulatory mandates. Furthermore, an approach that bypasses internal compliance checks and external regulatory reviews, prioritizing speed over thoroughness, demonstrates a disregard for established governance frameworks and exposes the firm to substantial compliance risks. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes a comprehensive understanding of the regulatory environment before and during RPA implementation. This involves a multidisciplinary approach, engaging legal, compliance, IT, and business units. The process should include a thorough risk assessment, the development of robust governance policies, continuous monitoring, and regular audits to ensure ongoing compliance. Prioritizing a compliance-first mindset ensures that technological advancements serve the business without compromising its legal and ethical obligations. Question 17. The performance metrics show a significant increase in the number of exceptions logged by an Automation Anywhere bot runner responsible for processing new insurance policy applications, alongside a slight decrease in overall processing speed. Which of the following represents the most appropriate best practice evaluation and response? Option A. Focus solely on the reduction in processing speed and investigate potential hardware or network issues impacting the bot runner's performance. Option B. Archive the exception logs and continue monitoring the bot runner's performance, assuming the increased exceptions are a temporary anomaly. Option C. Immediately increase the processing speed allocation for the bot runner to compensate for the perceived slowdown, assuming the exceptions are minor system glitches. Option D. Conduct a detailed audit of the bot runner's execution logs, cross-referencing exception details with the source application data and relevant regulatory requirements for policy data accuracy and completeness. The correct answer is D. Conduct a detailed audit of the bot runner's execution logs, cross-referencing exception details with the source application data and relevant regulatory requirements for policy data accuracy and completeness. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the drive for operational efficiency through RPA with the paramount need for regulatory compliance and data integrity within the insurance sector. The specific challenge lies in interpreting and acting upon performance metrics for an automation anywhere bot runner in a way that upholds the principles of data accuracy, security, and auditability, all of which are heavily regulated. Misinterpreting these metrics or acting on them without considering the regulatory implications could lead to significant compliance breaches, financial penalties, and reputational damage. The correct approach involves a thorough investigation of the bot runner's performance deviations by cross-referencing its logs with the underlying insurance policy data and relevant regulatory requirements. This approach is correct because it directly addresses potential data integrity issues and ensures that any automation activity aligns with the strict data handling and reporting standards mandated by insurance regulations. For instance, if a bot runner is experiencing errors, a deep dive into its execution logs and a comparison with the source and target data, alongside a review of the specific regulatory clauses governing that data's processing, e.g., data accuracy requirements for policy issuance or claims processing, is essential. This ensures that the automation is not inadvertently causing misstatements or noncompliance. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the speed or volume of transactions processed by the bot runner without verifying the accuracy or compliance of those transactions. For example, if the metrics indicate a high transaction throughput, but also a slight increase in error flags within the bot runner's logs, ignoring these flags and attributing them to minor system glitches would be a regulatory failure. This is because insurance regulations often stipulate precise data accuracy standards, and any deviation, even if seemingly minor, could lead to incorrect policy terms, overpayments in claims, or inaccurate regulatory reporting, all of which are serious compliance violations. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately halt the bot runner's operation based on a single anomaly without a proper diagnostic process. This could disrupt critical business functions and lead to operational inefficiencies without understanding the root cause, potentially missing an opportunity to refine the automation within regulatory bounds. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes a risk-based approach. When performance metrics indicate deviations, the first step should be to understand the nature and potential impact of these deviations. This involves detailed log analysis, data validation, and a review of the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the automated process. If a potential compliance issue is identified, the next step is to implement corrective actions that not only resolve the immediate problem but also prevent recurrence, always with an eye towards maintaining data integrity and adhering to regulatory mandates. This iterative process of monitoring, investigating, and correcting, grounded in regulatory understanding, is key to responsible RPA deployment in the insurance industry. Question 18. Process analysis reveals that a financial services firm is designing an RPA solution to automate customer onboarding for insurance policies. Which of the following approaches to risk assessment during the design, development, testing, and deployment phases best aligns with UK regulatory expectations for data protection and fair customer treatment? Option A. Implementing a phased risk assessment strategy, with specific risk identification and mitigation activities tailored to the unique challenges and regulatory considerations of each phase: design, development, testing, and deployment, involving cross-functional input. Option B. Delegating the entire risk assessment process to the RPA development team without involving compliance or legal departments. Option C. Conducting a single, comprehensive risk assessment during the initial design phase and assuming it covers all subsequent stages of the RPA lifecycle. Option D. Focusing exclusively on technical risks such as bot performance and system integration, with minimal consideration for data privacy and customer impact. Correct answer is C. Conducting a single, comprehensive risk assessment during the initial design phase and assuming it covers all subsequent stages of the RPA lifecycle. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because the implementation of RPA in insurance, particularly within the UK regulatory framework governed by bodies like the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, and the Information Commissioner's Office, ICO, demands a rigorous approach to risk assessment throughout the design, development, testing, and deployment phases. The inherent complexity of insurance processes, coupled with the potential for data breaches, operational errors, and non-compliance, necessitates a proactive and systematic identification and mitigation of risks. Failure to do so can lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and erosion of customer trust, all of which are critical considerations under FCA principles of treating customers fairly and maintaining market integrity. The correct approach involves a comprehensive, phase-specific risk assessment that integrates regulatory compliance and ethical considerations from the outset. This means identifying potential risks at each stage of the RPA lifecycle, from initial process mapping and bot design, through development and coding, to rigorous testing scenarios and the final deployment into a live environment. For instance, during design, risks related to data privacy, ICO regulations, and the accuracy of automated decisions, FCA principles, must be considered. In development, risks of insecure coding practices or inadequate error handling need to be addressed. Testing must cover a wide range of scenarios, including edge cases and potential system failures, to ensure the bot operates as intended and does not introduce new risks. Deployment requires a robust rollback plan and continuous monitoring to detect and address any emergent issues promptly. This holistic, proactive approach aligns with the FCA's emphasis on robust governance and risk management, and the ICO's requirements for data protection by design and by default. An incorrect approach would be to conduct a single, high-level risk assessment at the beginning of the project and assume it covers all subsequent phases. This fails to acknowledge that new risks can emerge or existing risks can change in nature and severity as the RPA solution progresses through development and into production. For example, a risk identified during design might be adequately mitigated, but a flaw in the testing environment or an unforeseen interaction with a legacy system during deployment could introduce a new, critical vulnerability. This approach would likely violate FCA Principle 3, managing and controlling the firm's business effectively, and Principle 7, communications with clients, as it could lead to operational failures impacting customers. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on technical risks and overlook regulatory and ethical implications. For example, developing a bot that automates claims processing without adequately considering the FCA's requirements for fair treatment of customers or the ICO's data protection principles would be a significant failure. This could lead to biased outcomes, unfair treatment of policyholders, or unauthorized processing of personal data, resulting in breaches of the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, and FCA rules. A third incorrect approach is to delegate risk assessment entirely to the IT or development team without involving compliance, legal, or business stakeholders. This siloed approach can lead to a lack of understanding of the broader regulatory landscape and business impact, potentially resulting in the identification of only a subset of relevant risks. The FCA expects a firm-wide approach to risk management, requiring input from all relevant departments to ensure comprehensive oversight. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve establishing a cross-functional risk management committee for RPA projects. This committee should be responsible for defining a risk assessment framework that is integrated into each phase of the RPA lifecycle. Regular reviews and updates to the risk register should be mandatory, with clear ownership assigned for risk mitigation actions. Furthermore, continuous training for all involved personnel on relevant UK regulations, FCA, ICO, and ethical best practices is crucial to foster a risk-aware culture. Question 19. Quality control measures reveal that an RPA bot deployed to process insurance claims is accessing and processing sensitive customer financial and medical data without explicit encryption protocols in place for the data handled by the bot, and the bot has been granted broad access privileges to the claims processing system. Which of the following represents the most appropriate immediate action to ensure compliance with data security regulations? Option A. Update the RPA bot's logging capabilities to better track data access and usage, assuming that increased visibility will mitigate security risks. Option B. Continue the RPA bot's operations while a new encryption solution is researched and procured, with a plan to retroactively apply it to historical data processed by the bot. Option C. Immediately halt the RPA bot's operations and conduct a comprehensive security audit to implement robust encryption and restrict the bot's access privileges to only the data necessary for its defined tasks. Option D. Inform the IT security team about the potential vulnerabilities and await their instructions on how to proceed without interrupting the bot's current processing. The correct answer is C. Immediately halt the RPA bot's operations and conduct a comprehensive security audit to implement robust encryption and restrict the bot's access privileges to only the data necessary for its defined tasks. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the efficiency gains of RPA with the paramount importance of data security within the insurance sector. The use of RPA, while beneficial for streamlining processes, introduces new vectors for potential data breaches if not implemented and managed with stringent security protocols. The challenge lies in ensuring that the automation itself does not inadvertently compromise sensitive customer information, which is a core regulatory and ethical obligation for insurance firms. Careful judgment is required to identify and mitigate these risks proactively. The correct approach involves implementing robust data encryption for all data processed by the RPA bots, both in transit and at rest, and ensuring that access controls are strictly enforced, granting bots only the minimum necessary permissions to perform their tasks. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and secure by design, which are fundamental to data protection regulations. Specifically, within the UK regulatory framework, this would be guided by the Data Protection Act 2018, DPA 2018, and the UK GDPR, which mandate appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. This includes protecting against unauthorized or unlawful processing and against accidental loss, destruction, or damage. The CISI, Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment, Code of Conduct also emphasizes the duty to act with integrity and due care, which extends to safeguarding client data. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the speed of data processing without adequate security measures fails to meet regulatory requirements. For instance, processing sensitive customer data without encryption exposes it to interception and unauthorized access, a direct violation of the DPA 2018 and UK GDPR requirements for data security. Another incorrect approach that involves granting broad access permissions to RPA bots, allowing them to access more data than strictly necessary for their function, increases the attack surface and the potential for accidental data leakage or misuse. This contravenes the principle of data minimization and the requirement for proportionate security measures. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a thorough risk assessment of the RPA implementation, identifying all potential data security vulnerabilities. This should be followed by the design and implementation of security controls that are proportionate to the identified risks and compliant with relevant regulations. Continuous monitoring and auditing of RPA bot activities are essential to detect and respond to any security incidents promptly. Professionals must prioritize regulatory compliance and ethical data handling over mere operational efficiency when dealing with sensitive customer information. Question 20. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a newly implemented robotic process automation RPA solution for processing insurance policy endorsements is performing data manipulation, including updating customer addresses and policy terms. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with data integrity and accuracy regulations? Option A. Manually reviewing a small, random sample of policy endorsements processed by the RPA to verify data manipulation. Option B. Relying solely on the internal testing performed by the RPA development team to confirm the accuracy of data manipulation. Option C. Conducting a thorough, independent validation of the RPA's data manipulation outputs against source data and performing regular reconciliation checks. Option D. Prioritizing the rapid deployment of the RPA to realize efficiency gains, with data validation to be addressed in a later phase. The correct answer is C. Conducting a thorough, independent validation of the RPA's data manipulation, outputs against source data, and performing regular reconciliation checks. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the efficiency gains of RPA with the stringent regulatory obligations surrounding data manipulation in the insurance sector. The core tension lies in ensuring that automated processes, while designed to streamline operations, do not inadvertently compromise data integrity, accuracy, or compliance with data protection laws. Professionals must exercise careful judgment to identify and mitigate risks associated with RPA-driven data manipulation, particularly concerning sensitive customer information. The correct approach involves a comprehensive, risk-based validation process that includes independent testing and reconciliation of data manipulated by the RPA. This approach is professionally sound because it directly addresses the regulatory imperative to maintain accurate and reliable data. Specifically, under the UK regulatory framework for insurance, such as guidelines from the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, and the Information Commissioner's Office, ICO, firms have a duty to ensure data is accurate, processed lawfully, and protected. Independent validation provides an objective assurance that the RPA is performing data manipulation as intended and in compliance with these requirements, preventing potential breaches of data accuracy or privacy. An incorrect approach that relies solely on the RPA developer's internal testing fails to meet regulatory expectations for independent oversight. This approach is professionally unacceptable because it lacks the necessary objectivity and external validation required to assure data integrity. Regulators expect robust internal controls and independent assurance mechanisms. Another incorrect approach, which involves manual review of a small sample of manipulated data, is insufficient because it does not provide a statistically significant level of assurance and may miss systemic errors introduced by the RPA. This approach risks noncompliance with data accuracy requirements and could lead to incorrect policy administration or claims processing, violating principles of fair treatment of customers. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed of deployment over thorough data validation is ethically and regulatorily flawed. This prioritization can lead to the deployment of an RPA that is not fit for purpose, potentially causing significant harm to customers through data errors, and exposing the firm to regulatory sanctions for failing to uphold data integrity and customer protection standards. Professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This framework should identify potential data manipulation risks associated with RPA implementation, evaluate the likelihood and impact of these risks, and define appropriate mitigation strategies. Professionals should then implement controls that include independent validation, ongoing monitoring, and regular audits of RPA performance, particularly concerning data handling. Prioritizing regulatory compliance and data integrity over speed of deployment is paramount, ensuring that any RPA solution is robust, reliable, and adheres to all applicable legal and ethical standards.